Hi everyone, this is my next session. I thought I would talk to you on the situation on current coronavirus and how I look at it from a lawyer's perspective. It's important that we also evaluate this scenario from the lens of a lawyer, as how a lawyer is looking at it, and not just as a normal layman who would observe the entire scenario in their perspective. But we must get a perspective from a legal lens and see what are the key aspects of this coronavirus situation that we are currently missing out. The devil is in the details, as we know, and unfortunately, what we have observed in all the discussions and all the literature around coronavirus is that we are very happily moving ahead without really focusing on the real finer details of this entire scenario. There has been a lot of talk, there has been a lot of discussion, a lot of arguments, a lot of views provided by various people, various parties. But but really, one observes that a lot of them have been really missing the points, the key elements, the key aspects of this entire COVID-19 scenario, where one needs to be very thoughtful and mindful of. And I thought that it would be good if I could also share my views on some of the key salient points that actually one needs to really be mindful of. I know this situation really woke up the people in the month of March, if I'm right, when people really got aware of it and really started taking precautions and started taking measures from the month of March. But you really, if you look at it, this scenario was in our face from the month of Jan. It was in the news in the month of Jan. People were aware of it because it had already had an outbreak in China, and people have been following news, and it was very much in the news that the city of Wuhan was observing a lockdown, and rapidly the virus was spreading, and it was having an impact on the livelihood of the people and the lives of people. A lot of people were dying, and the whole city had come to a standstill. In fact, there was a YouTube video that people might have seen where it was clearly depicting the sad state of affairs in the city of Wuhan, where people were completely locked up, and then everything was at a standstill, and the supermarkets were not functioning, the offices were closed, people were prevented from traveling, and there was a complete chaos in terms of that people were completely put in a lockdown mode, and and we were observing it from far distance, maybe in UK or in US, but we were just probably not that serious. We were mostly focused on our own lives and without really uh, giving much thought to it as why it was happening and what are the precautions that we need to take uh, at that moment, or what were the precautions that we should take going forward. Rather, we were more curious on how the Wuhan people were handling the scenario, and maybe make cracking jokes, or really looking at the funny side, but not really giving much thought to the fact that it could well hit us at some point of time. We were even watching movies like Contagion, but really we were not thinking that, well, this could well happen to us sometime in the next maybe month or so, and then are we safe, and are we taking enough precautions? People at the high offices like Boris Johnson or even Donald Trump were the least serious of us, and they just mocked it away, um, probably thinking about the economic impact or how it would affect their own status in the political scenario. But but really, I mean, what was more important was to understand the deadly nature of the virus and the infectious nature of the virus and how it was rapidly spreading across the world. But yes, we were late. And we must face it that we have been late and we are suffering the consequences. And we have been late because we didn't really focus on the finer aspects of this disease, this deadly disease. So, what are the finer aspects of this deadly disease? Number one is knowing from where this actually initiated. Till date, and today is the 12th of May, till date, we are not really sure where this entire outbreak happened. We put the blame sometimes on China, saying, well, it started from the wet market because the virus is supposed to have been found in the bats, and then it may have jumped into some intermediary and some other animal, and then it might have been contracted by a human being. And then it must have spread because of the rapid mode of traveling of people across the globe and the kind of human to human interactions that we have in our daily lives, without realizing that there could have been an earlier outbreak to this. And how did it happen? And did we start an investigation at the right time? As a lawyer, I know how important it is to do the right amount of investigation to find out the truth. But how much serious were we related to an investigation? Till date, and till today, we haven't really formed a right investigation team to find out the real cause of the outbreak. And that is really, really dreadful. And we have so many legal bodies functioning. There's WHO, there's UN, and there are the almighty powerful US heading so many other key organizations. There are G7s, etc. But have we really found out through a deep dive investigation as to the nature of the outbreak which started initially? There are a lot of theories which are floating. And one of them, interestingly, is that this outbreak might have happened from a lab, that the virus would have spread from the lab. Hilarious as it may sound, but there are theories. There are theories from China as well. China is saying that maybe America was responsible for the outbreak, with the army being responsible for it. Where everybody has their own story to tell. But what is the right story? Do we know? It's very, very, very important that we know the cause of the outbreak. When did it start? Did it start in October 2019? Some of the researchers have said that, the disease may have had its outbreak in October. There were people who may have contracted the disease in France. France, mind you, has been badly affected by this disease. So they probably found somebody infected by this disease way early. Way early than what we know about the start of the virus. Somewhere in December, or maybe even earlier than that, people may have contracted the disease. And there are researchers who are coming up with a lot of explanations saying that this disease may have actually started in the month of October. Was it earlier than that as well? Do we know it? No. So we haven't done our part there. And as a lawyer, and me being a lawyer who goes into the details, I think the detail here is missing, unfortunately. And there's no noise about it. No noise from anywhere about the right investigation that needs to be done. Not even Trump is saying that, surprisingly. Yeah, his stakes are very high, mind you. So then the other question is, and this has been quite perplexing. Again, a question of detail is the capacity of the virus to mutate. So again, a lot of theories have been flowing and floating around on this, that the virus can mutate in various manifestations, various forms. So the virus could be present in, say, 10 forms, 12 forms. And interestingly, there are researchers who have now brought the virus into 3 categories, or they have rather divided the virus into 3 categories, A, B, and C. And the common form, which is in Wuhan, is actually the B type, and the A type, which is probably the most infectious one, is found in US and maybe in Europe. So there's still lack of clarity on the types and natures of virus and how quickly the virus mutate and the various forms that it can take. Again, I think there are a lot of researches going on, but unless and until we get a clear picture and clear detailing around the form and the types of mutations the virus can happen, we really wouldn't get the complete picture. And that is very, very vital. And I don't know how long will it take. I think that would also go a long way in solving a lot of questions related to the right therapeutic drugs or the right kind of vaccine that needs to be developed to curb this virus or spread of this virus. Obviously, when you're talking about the vaccine and the drugs, there have been innumerable theories as what would be the right drug or what would be the right vaccine. And I believe that there are n number of teams that are working across the globe. Someday you hear an Israel medical team or a researching team have developed a virus. Someday I hear a team in Middle East which have really worked hard and have developed a vaccine that is now in clinical trials. And someday I hear that, well, UK is in the forefront and Oxford University may just develop the virus by September. And these sort of news actually go to the people and people start believing, oh man, I mean, are we very close to developing a virus? We'll surely get one virus. But we know for sure that one thing, that the SARS vaccine hasn't been developed after 18 years, mind it. So where is this false hope coming from? Then this is compounded by the fact that a lot of eminent and reputed organizations who have been in the forefront earlier related to the development of vaccines have been very confident on TV, saying that surely we'll get the virus at some point of time. But how much can we rely on such kind of statements? Don't the people deserve better? Don't the people need to know that the virus will be something that would be effective and at the right time? Don't the people need to deserve to know the truth at this time when they're all concerned, worried, and really not really sure about what's coming next? So why don't we have something, some more detailing around this and a concrete kind of paper developed on really what way the virus can be curtailed through a right vaccine and what really would be the right time period within which why can't the teams which are working extensively come together and form one world team which would be given the responsibility for developing one vaccine by, say, the shortest possible time? Why can't the world leaders come together and do that? Why the detailing around the development of vaccine across the globe is so scattered and so confusing and confounding that every day there's a new news on the development of the drugs and the development of the vaccine? I thought that this was another important aspect of the coronavirus situation, which needs more detailing and more attention to the details. That's really is very, very important. The other aspect and the theory that's really confounding people is how do we go about our daily scenario? How do we handle the virus as we work in our daily scenario? And recently, when I heard Boris Johnson's confusing speech, I was really confounded. I mean, he says, in case you're not able to work from home, you go back to office. I mean, the message throughout has been stay home. And now he's saying, in case you're not able to stay home, you go back to office. I mean, how confusing this can be. Again, lack of detailing, lack of clarity. What does he want to say? I mean, he himself is probably not clear on this. Without really getting too much into criticizing him, I think what really needs to be understood and what really the leaders of our political sphere need to clear the people's mind is how they go about the daily business. They say that you have to maintain a social distancing of 2 meters. They say that you have to limit your travel in the train or other modes of commuting. They say that you have to minimize your appearances in various places, and so on and so forth. I mean, these are fine, but how is the implementation going to happen? Again, detailing. Sorry, the detailing message is not being put across properly by the leaders. For instance, the detailing around, say, travel. Now, how do you expect people to go back to work if they're not commuting by the regular modes of travel like bus or train? But you're not stopping them. And neither you're giving a clear cut plan on how the people would get accommodated in the buses or the trains. The tubes are flooded with, I mean, they're overcrowded with people. And you could see that after the first day of start of work on 11th of May. And it was jam packed and people were all over the place and there was utter chaos. But there was no detailing around how the people need to maintain the safe distance while traveling. I think Germany has done a better job on that, but obviously, I think we still are not advising the people in the right way related to the implementation of certain plans, especially in this COVID scenario, and keeping in mind that there could as well be a second outbreak, which could be far more deadly than the first one. So again, I think far more comprehensive detailing needs to be done related to planning out the measures um, to allow people get back to work in this current scenario where it's like a double whammy where people are really getting affected by the virus and losing out on jobs as well as losing out on their loved ones or their health. So I think it's really a tough scenario, but the messaging and again, without sounding repetitive, I think devil is in the details. If people are being told in much more clarity, like how they would be really handling this scenario, that would really help people to also get away from this extreme misery and dreadful situation which they're compounded with. The other aspect of this whole coronavirus situation, which I found really troublesome, was the way the messaging was on the supermarket scenario. Uh, Really, the way the supermarkets handled themselves was extremely admirable, commendable. But then there was no clear-cut message uh, related to how the people would actually come to the supermarket and then really buy goods from the supermarket. I know that there has been this communication about the social distancing, but really, if you ask me, across the world, the biggest troublesome zone where people could really get infected by this virus is the supermarket because it's the most crowded place of all places, other than probably commuting on trains and buses. And the chances of getting affected are the highest. But then, what are the guidelines? I mean, when people try to avoid going to the supermarket by going online and buying goods and products, they find, to their surprise, that they're in the queue and they probably can't get hold of a slot for a long time. Then they probably step out of the house and try to get into the supermarket. Although they may try to maintain that social distancing, but you can imagine it's going to be very tough, and the risk is still there, even if it is in terms of percentage much low. But still, they're carrying that risk, and the virus being an infectious virus, I mean, in case if God forbid, even after maintaining those kind of precautions, it were to um, infect infect people, I think nothing worse could happen than that. So I think there could have been better handling and better detailing about the entire supermarket scenario as well. But which I really found really perplexing. And I think we could have done better about it. The other theory on coronavirus situation is on the R rate, the rate of infection. Very interesting theory. The rate of infection, if it is less than one, I think we are improving. That's what has been told, and it's quite true. And if we keep the rate of infection below zero point 0.5 or less than zero point 0.7, I think we should be gradually opening up. That's the theory. Because if the rate of infection is more than 1, or if it goes beyond a certain, say 2, or certain number, say 3, then I think we are really, really getting to a horrible state of affairs where the infection is manifolding, I mean, increasing in much higher manner, and people are really getting affected by it. But how is this R determined? And for a normal person like many of us, I think this understanding of R is quite confounding, because again it would also depend on the nature of testing and the high level of testing done in a certain place. So if the testing is pretty low in places like the subcontinent, what would the R suggest? So obviously, if the testing is low, you wouldn't find many infected people. You would only find people whom you have just tested in a million. Say if you had to test only 500 people out of a million people, you're obviously going to detect only few infected people and not many. Like for instance, US, now they're testing in high numbers, although in million they're probably testing around maybe 20,000. And so you're bound to find more infected people. So how is that R determined there compared to, say, R determined in a place in the subcontinent where you're just testing less than 1,000? And how would you gauge the real infection nature, and how would you really determine whether the virus is rapidly spreading, or whether it's a community spread, or it is just spreading amongst the people? So so really, I mean, if there is no transparency in telling people about the right number of tests that are getting done, and if you're not taking the initiative to do the number of tests, would you be able to really curb the virus at any point of time? I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure. I mean, this problem will keep persisting until and unless you are testing the right numbers. And to be honest, a lot of governments, without taking names, have not been very clear and very keen on getting to the detailing of the testing. The testing has been very lopsided, and testing has been very, very casual at times. And that hasn't given the public the right visibility, the right picture of what is the state of the virus infection, whether the R is very high, whether the R has been curbed. But because there are a lot of theories around it, and a lot of governments have come to the conclusion, okay, we have controlled the R, so let's relax or ease down some of the restrictions. And they have gone ahead. But it is also true that the virus has come back in certain states. But again, I mean, the question mark on R is going to remain, and that's going to remain forever. And because of the the real uncertainty, lack of transparency on the testing numbers, and really a kind of binding norm on the testing numbers, then what is the whole purpose of having a WHO or UN who can't really control such scenarios come and enforce something on the government and say, okay, the minimum criteria for really handling this scenario is doing testing up to, say, for every